We're calling the June 12th Board of Selectmen meeting to order. Did everybody, do I do the
This
recording?
conference will now be recorded.
Okay. We'll stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This open meeting of the Town of Auburn Select Board is being conducted in both in person and remotely, consistent with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the board bodies are allowed to participate remotely as long as reasonable access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For the public to join the meeting remotely or by telephone, they can call remotely by telephone. You can call 408-650-3123 and use access code 235-235-861. Or the public can join via computer at global.gotomeeting.com/join/235-235-861. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's website. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Please note that this meeting is being recorded by Auburn Cable Television. Is there anybody else recording? Seeing none, we will move forward with public comments. So first I have Terry Moriarty.
Good evening. I'm a concerned citizen of Auburn. I live at 15 Packagug Village. I've lived there 12 years now. I have huge concerns that Lori Brennan is trying to put Wayne Page back on the board. I'd like to know if it's legal. He just lost his seat on the board through the town vote as well as on the Board of Selectmen. Is it legal for her to now try and push him back on the board, which is already very slanted? It's many people approach me. I'm president of FASCR at the senior center. Many people talk about that board being corrupt. We had two females that ran for tenant reps. They brought paperwork around to the tenants. They got signatures. I believe their next course of action was to come to the Board of Selectmen to get voted onto that board, to be accepted onto that board. Once they got on that board, Ms. Brennan decided you are not to talk to tenants. And they've now had their positions changed, but they are very much under her thumb. We have Wendy, who just won an election and seems to be very interested in helping the tenants. But when you've only got 5 people on the board and Lori has 4 of them locked in, that's not going to give Wendy even a starting chance to help us out. And we need the help. She wants to cancel all the housing meetings through broadcast. She doesn't want them broadcast anymore. We went through Senator Moore. We finally got her to open the community room. She now wants to shut it down. I've been working on this for years. There are so many problems. I don't have enough time to go through it. But Lori's been on that board for 16 years. Wayne was on the board for 10 years, and the problems just keep mounting. Lori refuses to speak to any tenant. Wayne claims to be her boss, but I've asked for many meetings with her, and when Wayne finally gets back to me, he says she sees no reason to speak to you. So I don't know what the scoop is with Mr. Page. I don't think he deserves the position. Lori's trying to say nobody else showed any interest. I don't know a lot about the boards. Like I said, I've been on the FASCA board, but if it's a matter of weighing page or nothing, then I would like to put in a letter of intent. And I'm not sure how to do that. So I don't know if you people have any advice or any words of wisdom that you can offer.
If I may, Madam Chair. As it relates to the vacancy, there is a process. And I did have a discussion with Betty this morning. I reached out late last week as a result of learning of the board's vote to recommend Wayne Page. All I can say is there's a process that the board, both the Board of Selectmen and the Housing Authority Board has to follow in filling that vacancy. That requires a joint vote once there's a notification to the board relative to the vacancy, which we received in a memo from the chair last week, and it's actually on the agenda tonight. The notification will be served to the board in session tonight. That triggers a process, and I think there'll be some discussion relative to that tonight, how that process is gonna take place. Whether there's gonna be a suggestion of advertising for the position, whether there's an open process, and how that's going to work. So I think you'll hear that unfold tonight, but there is a process that requires a dual vote by both boards.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Next for public comment is Dan Largess.
I'd like to reserve my comments for later. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so moving on, we have an automotive repair license application by Lundgren Collision Center. This is a hearing, so we would need a motion to open the hearing.
Madam Chair, I make a motion, we open the public hearing for the automotive repair license application for Lundgren Collision Center, 117 Washington Street.
Can you give me your name?
My name is Jared Miles,
Okay.
and I am the GM for Lundgren Collision Center. We are just applying for the business license. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Jared Lyles. I am the GM for Lundgren Collision Center. We are here to apply for our business license to run the repair facility.
Madam Chair,
Oh, so I'm so sorry. We need to vote to open the hearing. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Oh, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair is a yes. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just here so for the application of the business license to run the repair facility. We do everything from suspension work, collision repairs, paint work, to vehicles, mainly insurance-related claims. But that's pretty much it.
This is at the dealership on Route 20.
So we are connected to the dealership. We are a separate, now in a separate building, yes.
We're in the next building over with the classic cars and whatnot.
We're actually further down the street than that. We're at 117 Washington Street. The classic cars is at 163 and 141, I believe. Yeah.
And you're not making any changes to the facility at all? This is an existing facility?
No, sir. No.
Looking to renew?
Looking to apply, I guess when the new collision center was built, they didn't know, nobody brought it to light that they would have to apply for a license for the separate building.
I see you run the DCG. You're aware of the DCG comment?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's all I have. Probably nothing worth hearing, but I will.
Are there any other questions from board members? So we would need a motion to close the hearing.
Just have to ask if there's any public.
Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any public comments?
I'd make a motion, we close the hearing, Madam Chair.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion that we approve the license, provided that all applicable requirements of the state and town and any of its departments, boards, and commissions have been fulfilled. Said license is subject to all the conditions stated upon it. Failed to comply with any and all conditions shall invalidate the license and render it null and void, and with the conditions of the DCG to be placed on the license.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair is yes. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
There are no communications. We're gonna move to select board general items.
We want to move up.
Yeah.
No. But they didn't do a roll call vote on the vote.
Through the chair, I'd like to make a motion that we move up town manager item 6A.
Oh.
Discussion on the public safety facility and potential vote.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair is a yes. Okay,
Thank you, members of the board, Madam Chair. If I could ask both chiefs to come up and join us here. As you recall, we had a joint meeting at the high school several weeks back relative to the public safety facility and its present recommendation from the committee. Their recommendation was for a joint public safety facility with the location on West Street at a cost of $78 million. And as you recall, this discussion that evening did not contain some other items that are gonna require an obligation on behalf of the town. That being said, I think the recommendation still stands despite the discussion. I think the board needs to take a position on that recommendation by either voting to send it to the voters, not support the recommendation, and maybe look at some other priority that may address a different type project. So this is a process. This is the way the recommendation comes to the board. The board needs to make a decision on what it wants to do with that recommendation. Both chiefs are here. I know the chairman of the Public Safety Facilities, Kevin Kennedy, is here as well. If you should have any questions relative to the project as it presently stands at this point.
do any board members have questions?
The plan is to move forward as it was presented, knowing, and again, well, if we send it to the voters, is the intention to continue down that path, or is it to go back to the drawing board at that point? Or are we looking to go to back to the drawing board now? I don't know what.
So, we've had some preliminary discussions relative to the project and its present cost estimate of 78. I think our observations at this point, based upon the joint meeting, is there appears not to be an appetite for a project that large. That being said, there may be some consideration for a refocusing of the priorities that need to be addressed. But certainly I don't want to usurp your authority. But those are some of the things you may want to consider.
I do have, I don't know if anybody can hear me. But my suggestion before we take a vote is have some public forums, whether it's at a board meeting, probably ideally in the fall, to see what appetite there is, because we really haven't heard from the residents. They weren't at the joint meeting. I know my inbox hasn't been full, so rather than presume to know what they think, I'd rather give them an opportunity to invite them in and ask what their thoughts are, That would be my preference, to have a couple of meetings probably in the fall and then see what goes on, but.
So with respect to, looking at different alternatives, would that not be done until this board, essentially votes down moving forward with the current, proposal for a dual, station?
So, yes, a couple of things. So the board would have to take a position that would drive a different type of analysis or redesign. But if that should happen, it's gonna require a supplemental appropriation for the architect to go back and redesign the project based upon whatever conditions are determined to be a priority. So if we wait until the fall to listen to public comments, we may miss the opportunity for an appropriation at the fall town meeting to refocus our efforts.
I think from that joint meeting, it was pretty clear that fire has the greatest need. Not to diminish the need of the police department. Would that be something that you as the chiefs would be interested in going back and looking at a fire station on West Street with the possibility of, I know the architect had indicated that it was possible to add on to their design, with adding on police?
So we've talked about this through the chair, we've talked about this ad nauseum, and choose my words carefully. We definitely have a need for a public safety complex. There is definitely a need to expand the police department. We're on top of each other over there. Most everyone sitting here has been through the buildings, and they've listened to the testimony over the last 5 years from the architectural firms and all of that. But I'm also old and wise enough to tell you quite emphatically that the fire department has a much more emergent need. My son's a firefighter paramedic in another community. I see the needs of the situation with the fire department. You know, the building on West Street is filled with asbestos. I would certainly have concerns if my son, a family member, worked there, worried about the carcinogens and separation of their turnout gear, where their living quarters are. So if you call 911, you need a police officer, we're gonna keep coming. My recommendation would be, with something that we discussed, we recognize that the town and some of our citizens on fixed incomes may not have the stomach for a $78 million project at this time with the interest rates where they are. It's expensive, and I'd be concerned as a citizen. But the project isn't gonna get any cheaper. No matter how you look at it, it's going to go up. We've heard it from all the experts. If we could potentially look at, and feel free to chime in, Steve, if we could potentially look at taking the footprint of the building that was designed by the architectural firm and moving fire and communications and records and storage and all of that first, and maybe taking a smaller bite at the apple and hoping that in the future that the interest rates come down, and then maybe moving on with the police station. I think that would probably make the most sense. I'm not gonna sit up here and pound my chest and tell you, you shouldn't be, leaving the police out. That's something that I have to sell to my officers. And, but I think they understand it. We have a very strong relationship with the fire department, with all the rank and file. But you look at the current situation of both fire facilities. I'm in a facility that's a quarter of a century old. These buildings that they're in now, especially the one on West Street, was never designed to be a fire station. And I could comfortably address my rank and file of my police department to say that I feel that the fire department needs to take priority at this time. It's a much more emergent concern.
So I know, Mr. Carpenter, you said you wanted to get more public input. Would you still would you still like that public input before we make a decision, or would you be comfortable with looking at just a fire facility.
My feeling is, we also, at the meeting, which had not been revealed for the entire 5 years, is that the school department needs, have needs, and we haven't even planned for that, we haven't even had that discussion. So, to me, we have an incomplete process, we haven't closed the circle because we have these other expenses that we are going to bear the cost. So we know it's not 78 million, it's whatever it is. So, no, I wouldn't want to presuppose what the citizens would say and say, well, we decided already that this is the direction we're going. Not that I think that it's a bad direction. I personally don't like the West Street location, and I've been fairly open about that. I don't think that's going to take care of the needs of either department or the town going forward. So I have serious concerns about using that facility, as well as what are we gonna do with the school department? Because apparently they've got more needs than we've planned for. So I would say, you know, summer is a terrible time to have public hearings because people are on vacation. You know, we can certainly do it after school starts, as on the early side of things, so that we can try and get it. And we've certainly had more than one special town meeting. So if we needed to, after those hearings, to ask our town meeting members to come and discuss something that was very important and we didn't want to delay, then I would certainly support calling such a meeting. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Through the chair, what would be the latest that we would need to know for appropriating funds for the architect to revisit this? If that's the path that goes.
So typically, the board is asked to open up the warrant in late August, and close it maybe second week in September. That addresses needs that would go to the fall town meeting. Now, they could do it as a placeholder, possibly, knowing that if there is a public hearing process, that the citizens could be heard, that warrant article could be postponed indefinitely, or could serve as a placeholder in the event that it's determined that the taxpayers don't want to pay for a joint public safety facility.
Madam Chair, if I may. So I having recently run for the seat, heard from a lot of people, their feelings on this. I got many emails, many Facebook call outs. Everyone I think recognizes the needs, but the amount of money, like the chiefs have said, I don't think there's the appetite for something this large, knowing also that there are those unaccounted for costs for relocating the temporary school, then outfitting the police station to become the school department and their needs, etc. That being said, I agree with, the chief when he said that the police have a need. They are on top of each other. It is cramped. But when it comes to the fire department, maybe the new kid on the block here, but to me, that's a public safety issue waiting to happen, a public health issue, with their turnout gear, with how they're on top of each other, with being in the buildings they're in. I'm quite concerned about kicking the can down the road again, waiting even longer, potentially missing our deadline in the fall for an allocation in order to move this process. And I'd like to see this process keep moving forward. We've heard from the police chief that the police are willing to step back and allow fire to move forward, realizing this. Hopefully, what the architect said at that meeting was that he could stage the building in pieces. He could build the fire part at a later time, come back and build the police part, when interest rates are hopefully better, when when we have a stronger tax base, etc. I'm prepared tonight to, if it takes voting this down, the dual process, voting it down, it's not because I don't support it, it's because I want this to move forward. So I'm prepared tonight to vote this down so that we can instruct town staff to make plans to move forward with the fire portion of this, engage the architect so we can keep this moving forward. I don't think we should be waiting till September to hold public meetings, to hear what I think we've all heard and what we've all read on social media, that there's not a stomach for this, and then miss another year. Because then we have to wait till May. And then, like Mr. Carpenter said, we're coming into the summertime. You get that money as of July 1, if we pass it in May, you then have to engage the architect. You're now talking September before he's actually doing anything. And we're now years down the road. I don't think we can kick that can down the road anymore. I think we have to move forward.
I agree too. Madam Chair, I agree also. We should move on this now. We could still have public hearings, but we have 60 days, the entire month of June and July and August to have hearings and then have get an article onto the warrant. And you know, you mentioned a separate town meeting to address it, but it's very difficult to get attendance and get a quorum at town meetings. So a separate individual town meeting for that topic, it would be difficult.
I don't know, I survived all the school ones, and we had 5 in a year, and people certainly showed up. And when you start talking about $7 to $8 million, people are gonna show up. But, you know, I'm one member, but to me, to make a direction and then say to the public, well, we really want to hear from you. And I appreciate that other members have heard from the public, and I'm prepared to support whatever the board wishes to do, but I don't think you're gonna get a lot of people coming in if you've already made the decision. So, you know, to me, you can't put the cart before the horse. We can certainly schedule this in such a way that we can meet the fall town meeting if that's what we want. We don't have a fall town meeting, so we haven't even scheduled a date. So even if we scheduled it later in October to give people time to come back from their summer vacations, we could do it and get the information. But again, I'm one member, I'm happy to, and I actually appreciate all that has been said.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So a couple of thoughts. I think, you know, and the chief we share the same approach on this. We've wanted nothing more over the past 5 years than to engage the public in this process. We've tried really hard to do that. But I will also say that it's been extremely hard to do that. We've offered multiple open house tours. I had 22 people respond to tour the West Street station. I will say tonight, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this a successful project, to have citizen engagement. I'll just say that over the 5 years, I don't think that that's been there. Now, I will say that I agree with you that I think that there is a hybrid way to do this instead of putting the cart before the horse. We could have a placeholder on town meeting, have a public meeting, but at the end of the day, I think, you know, not to tell you what your role is, but at the end of the day, this decision ultimately lies with you. And even if you have a public hearing and you have 20 people come in here and say, we would like a public safety complex, at the end of the day, in your heart of hearts, you're taking a vote on what you believe and what's good for your constituents. And just in conversations with you all and conversations after the joint public meeting, I'm not quite sure that that's there. I'm not sure that the support is there for this board to move this project forward, regardless of how many public hearings we have between now and September. And at the end of the day, there's one thing that the chief and I do not want, and that is we do not want this project to fail at the box. So if we all feel that that's going to happen, I wouldn't even put it there. And at this point, I think that that's going to happen, regardless of how many public meetings we have. So I think moving forward, there will still be opportunities for the public to engage. We certainly encourage that. I hope we get more participation as we move forward. But at the end of the day, there's 5 people that decide on whether or not this moves forward to the ballot box. And I just don't know that that's there regardless. So I think that we've lost a tremendous amount of time on this project already. If COVID never happened and provided we had successful votes, we'd be in this building already. So in order to be able to move forward to try to get a project before the voters in May, we need to start working now over the summer to do that. We're still going to need that fall appropriation, but there's a lot of groundwork that we can cover between now and then that I just don't know. I don't know what we're going to gain by waiting another 3 to 4 months. Regarding the school department, I think with this plan, at least in conceptual conversations with the architects, the school department issues, we believe, essentially will go away. Because if we're not building the project on the full scope, then we would be able to demolish the fire station portion of West Street, which would leave the school department building as a standalone building, and then construct the fire department and what we're hoping will also be the 911 communications center as a part of that. Because in order to address even remotely some of the police department space issues that they contend with today, we have to gain them some square footage somewhere in the building. And right now, the only viable square footage is the communication center. So to move forward with a state-of-the-art updated 911 communication center as part of that project to allow that to move out of the building and then give them at least some square footage to be able to address some of their issues, we think that's imperative. So that will be the recommendation from us as we move forward, will be the construction of the fire station and a 911 communication center. But we believe that the school department issues essentially go away with that project. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I can.
Of course.
I swear this thing doesn't work, but anyways, I'll give it my best try. So what is it the town administration is asking us to do? Because again, up until 2 weeks ago, this wasn't even on my agenda. So first of all, that annoys me because now I'm being asked to make a decision, which I'm the only one who's been here for 5 years. And all through COVID, we were never asked as a board to move this forward, because I would have been a yes vote to move it forward, because it would have been a perfect time to do this. But I was never asked by anybody what my opinion was. So, you know, that's slight annoyance on my part as well. So if the thought process is we're giving a direction to the manager that we're going to build something and we're going to proceed with a plan for a appropriation in the fall, I'm happy to support that. But I'm not gonna support at any time saying, I want this before I talk to the public, because as you say, they're gonna come in and maybe it is 20 people, maybe it's 100 people, maybe it's nobody. We certainly had public hearings on ARPA where we got 6 people. And that's kind of sad because that was a great opportunity for people to express their concern. And I know I've encouraged people to reach out to you folks all along because the need is there. I mean, you've demonstrated that. There's not any doubt in my mind that with the way that you're operating now cannot even compare to what was in place in 1964 and 1998. I mean, it's just functionally different. So we need to prepare for that. So I'm all in favor of doing something. I'm just not going to presuppose what the voters want and say, yes, you can go forward with spending whatever money you have and then going forward. Because as far as I understand, you have an architect. You don't need to renegotiate this contract, correct?
That is correct, but all of the money for the architect, that money has been expended on the current design.
So how would you do the work during the summer? How would you do the planning?
No, in terms of prepping the architect for this is the direction that we're going. Nothing can be done formally without
Asking
creation.
great question.
But I think that there's a lot of things that we could do as far as, you know, looking at the site, figuring out, you know, citing it, you know, just other things that if we don't know what the direction is until
Knowing what the public
September,
wants to do.
it's just, you know, in my mind, it's lost out. I completely understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. I guess I'm just saying that I don't think the outcome is going to be different, but by a matter of process, I don't disagree with you.
So, I mean, I'm prepared to vote to give that type of direction, that you continue to work, look at it. I mean, it's been decided that West Street is the site, so my reservations, I think it's a terrible site. I really do. I don't think it's going to meet your needs. But you've made that decision, you've had the experts look at it, so that's settled in my mind right now. But I would be happy to go forward with a general direction that we are aiming for that and having public hearings. But again, I'm not in favor of giving, we're only gonna go with fire, we're gonna do this. Because again, to me, even if we get something, and we can, within a year or 2, 3 years to build this building, that's still 3 years of the same situation that you're confronting today. So, you know, I'm happy to work with you as much as I can, but again, I'm not gonna presuppose the voters, because
Mr. Kazanovich, would we, by voting this down today, would we be sending it back to the Public Safety Committee to reevaluate? Or would we just need to request, put it as a warrant article, request funds for the architect?
It could be done several different ways. I think certainly there's an understanding now that there's a direction that both chiefs would like to see this project head down that road. Unfortunately, there is a process, and then the process does rest with the Board of Selectmen. If the board so desired, they could get a sentiment of the general public by sending this to the vote is a ballot question. Listen, we could fund this within the tax levy, we have so much excess levy, but I always contend a project of this magnitude should be determined by the voters of this community. As a result of that, the only ones that can send it to the voters are the Board of Selectmen. So does the Board of Selectmen want to send this to the voters to determine whether or not there's a desire by them to fund this? Or does it want to give town administration, does it want to reject the recommendation and ask town administration to go back and revisit the project in a different format?
So at this time, we can continue to debate afterwards, but I'm prepared to make a motion that we reject the current proposal, the $78 million proposal, and we direct town administration to make plans to move forward with other designs, staging the building in 2 potential ways, but certainly allowing a new facility for the fire department to be built at the West Street location, hopefully in a manner that will allow the police department to be constructed and added on at a later date.
Is there a second?
Would you be open to adding public debate on this?
I think through that process, as the finance committee meets, as they have those public meetings with the architect, I think they will have a public process. I'm fine to add on to that, you know, requesting the town administration, because I don't think we can force the finance committee or others to hold public meetings, but certainly make a request that as part of that process, that design process, you hold public meetings and public hearings and allow the public to provide input as that design moves forward. I don't think it makes sense to have a public process and a public hearings on a $78 million dual building that at this point, nobody is advocating for.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so we're going back to 5A. We have some committee reappointments. We have been notified that members Kevin Kennedy and Trevor Sansucci have advised that they would like to be reappointed to the Finance Committee. We would need a motion to reappoint them. Do we need to take it separately?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to reappoint Kevin Kennedy and Trevor Sansucci to the Finance Committee for terms expiring June 30th, 2026.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It is unanimous. We have a zoning board of appeals. Megan Roche and Michael Marin have advised that they would like to be reappointing to the zoning board of appeals.
I'll make a motion, we appoint both to terms expiring on June 30th, 2026 to the ZBA.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The chair is yes, it's unanimous. And finally, we have Jerry Bailon has advised he would like to be reappointed to the Board of Registrars. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we reappoint the gentleman to a term expiring on June 30th, 2026.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair is yes, it is unanimous. We have no proclamations or recognitions, so we're gonna move on to gift acceptances in accordance with MGL Chapter 44, Section 53A. We have a couple of gift acceptances from DPW. Does anybody need to,
Madam Chair, I would make a motion that we accept with gratitude a gift from Fur Friends of Auburn, Inc. for $3,000 to the police department with a letter to be prepared for your signature to the Canine Gift Fund.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Chair is yes.
The second one we do not have, is this anonymous for $2,500 to the Independence Day celebration? There's no giftee.
This one.
Would,
I believe this is Hometown Bank. They're paying for the, to sponsor the 4th of July event.
I'll make a motion that we accept a gift from $2,500 for the June 29th Independence Day celebration from the donor that we will verify, but we believe is Hometown Bank, with a letter of gratitude signed by the chair.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair is yes.
We make a motion that we accept with gratitude and the letter be prepared for the chair's signature to DPW for the summer concert July 6th, Aquanet, from Cadent Inc.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
And last but not least, another $1,000 to the June 22nd concert for the tribute of Elvis from Gibbs Realty with a letter of appreciation signed by the chair.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair is a yes, it is unanimous. Moving on, we have the annual vote to reaffirm the code of conduct.
Madam Chair, do we want to move up redevelopment item? I see Mr. Benacasa is here.
Sure.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion that we move up town manager item 6D, revised development agreement, Perry Place.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair is a yes. Okay, Mr. Benacasa, did you want to come up?
So, Madam Chair, if I could just kick things off, you all received a revised development agreement as a result of the efforts of Mr. Todd Corain, board member. We met with Mr. Benacasa early last week to go over the revisions of the development agreement. He informed me on Friday that he was okay with the content that,
Just a couple clarifications.
okay. I think one of his questions involved beyond the $600,000 that would be set aside for the roadway maintenance and pedestrian safety in sidewalks, that other items of concern that were raised would come off of that,
Yes.
other than the $20,000 per year for 5 years for the townwide celebrations.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So with that, I'll, if you have some concerns that you want to raise, Jim, feel free to ask those now.
Okay, so on line V, so of the $600,000, just wanted to clarify, and I believe that we're all on the same page, that A, B, and C, you know, of the subsections underneath that would, those numbers would come out of the 600,000. Okay.
Correct. Yeah, the way this was written. Yep.
Yep. And then we did have a conversation with our management company. The other pushback that we did get was the bike facility outside. So the buildings themselves will have storage for the residents for bikes. The issue that they had is they said a lot of the times when you do those outside ones, they kind of don't look good. People end up leaving things there that are less desirable looking and not as nice. So she was like, you know, in the buildings, they will be storage. We try not to do outside ones or, you know, ones like that. But obviously if it's a big deal to the board, then
So as long as you are provided covered bike parking, whether it's inside the building or outside and covered,
Oh, okay.
you meet this requirement.
Okay, all right, perfect.
It's just
Yeah,
installed
it's-
covered
it's-
bike parking.
Yeah,
Yep, whether
yeah,
it's
there's
inside the building
indoor
or outside.
storage for bikes and everything, yeah, we have to, the tenants all want that stuff. Okay, all right, perfect. So we're good with that. The obvious that we keep, kind of bringing up is, and I saw Greg Woods is here tonight, is, as far as the water department goes, any more discussions as far as what you guys would like to do with that, as far as the 600,000, like I said, we've kind of allotted 600,000 to, improvements, offsite improvements, so. I guess I'll let the board. discuss.
Madam Chair, if I can just, I just, if it's okay, I'd just like to run down some of the changes that are here and the thinking behind them. So one of the first changes you'll see in the document in red addresses the essential local option or local preference for those that are going to house that get the affordable units. There was a desire at a previous board meeting by some members that this be geared towards town focus and a certain percentage be set aside. So what this does is it sets aside 70% of affordable units, provided they meet the income requirements and all other applicable laws, will be set aside for current town residents, employees of businesses located in town employees, or households with children attending the school in the Auburn School District. Obviously, if they do not get enough applicants to meet that 70%, then they can pull from the others. But this provides at least 70% for initial local preference for these units. Additionally, with respect to, we've had many discussions, or previous members of the board had previous discussions, and we did last meeting with respect to stormwater drainage and the impacts that may or may not happen as a result of raising the road. So in the bullet point number 3, we added the requirement that as part of the comprehensive permit filing to the state, they will include their stormwater report. And we specifically called out and required that in that report, they will have to identify how they will mitigate any negative impact to abutting residences at their own expense. So this provides clear language that the state will get that report, which I believe was the intention of the developer, the entire time. And as part of that, they will identify the mitigation that they'll provide if there's any negative impact. By moving that from the ZBA process to the comprehensive permit with the state, it allows the state to take all of that into consideration when they make their decision as well, whether to allow the project to move forward or not. Obviously, the big one is number 5, the bullet point for $600,000. This money was previously geared towards mitigation for the water department. Previous comments from previous boards, as well as our own comments, really, there seemed to be a majority, at least, of the opinion that we needed to use our LIP agreement to identify improvements for the taxpayers, not necessarily the ratepayers, and specifically to try to address improvements for the impact on Perry Street and Pearl Street as it relates to pedestrian safety in the increased traffic. So the $600,000 is set aside for that purposes. It does outline a specific requirement as it relates to the existing crosswalk at Auburn Street that people have identified as being unsafe under its current condition, although it's already being used. So we're gonna hopefully make it 1, ADA compliant, and 2, safer with the installation of rectangular rapid flashing beacons that are solar powered, so there's no cost to the town for energy use ongoing. And then provide the authority and power to our DPW director to either install sidewalks or to take steps necessary to make the street safe for pedestrians that are sharing the road with motor vehicles if a sidewalk is not built. So we are looking to make it as safe as possible for pedestrians along this corridor. And also for any other improvements that the DPW director identifies on Pearl Street, Pearl, Perry, or adjacent neighborhood roadways that are identified in the traffic report that may need improvements as well. This is for both maintenance as well as construction, so it could be pavement markings, could be new stop signs, could be anything related to that. And it provides the DPW and the town 5 years to spend this money after the end of the project. If they do not spend it within 5 years, they will have to return the money to the developer, but I'm quite sure that the town will be able to expend those funds for safety purposes. The other big change, is requiring the 4-foot sidewalk on Perry Place. We discussed it in the field. Everyone agreed that it was possible to be built. So it does require that. Additional small changes are, as you know, as part of this development, they're to construct walking trails and a playground that's supposed to be available for public use, not just the resident use. So they'll be requiring signs that actually inform the public as well as future residents that this is open to the public. So there's no confusion at a later date. The other change is that the $20,000 for over 5 years was initially for full occupancy of the project. That was wording that everybody agreed was not the way that it was supposed to be described. Now it'll be start coming due upon the issuance of a temporary permanent CO for the first building. So once the first building is built and they start occupying it, then that 20,000 starts kicking in. And the last part was the bike parking. Obviously, we're trying to do everything we can through our complete streets policy to promote walking, biking, and move away from single occupant vehicles. So those are the major changes that are in the document that we agreed to at the meeting. I know that the water department had a plan for that money. I know that they had wanted to invest it in some capital project that they were moving forward with. But I shared the perspective, I think, of other board members that this work is something that would have to be done now as part of the project or later on as a result of the project. And I'd rather do it now, no offense, using the developer's money, than later on using the taxpayers' money.
Do any board members have questions?
I do have one.
Steve, did you want to go first?
So it does have to still go through the ZBA process. The 600,000, any items that come up from ZBA are not included in that 600,000 and held separately?
So I believe any decision, the LIPS lives outside the ZBA process. So the ZBA process through their licensing, comprehensive licensing, requires any other mitigation due to safety concerns at the building, they would impose that on the developer separate of the LIP.
It actually brings up a good point though, because what if they're doing if we go through it and there is something as far as like the roadways and kind of what's covered within that 600 already, wouldn't that still kind of just be the same improvement that would need to be done if they're citing it as something needed?
So I do not want to speak for the ZBA or what they would require. They're obviously going to see a lot more reports than we would.
Yep.
This is what we're saying is necessary for us to sign or potentially necessary for us to potentially sign the LIP agreement. I think the ZBA has the authority to impose other mitigation as it relates to safety related reasons. If it's already addressed here, I'm pretty sure the ZBA will say it's already addressed in the LIP. But in some other reports, something might come up that they are going to require additional mitigation, and that's within their authority and purview to do. I don't think we are planning on limiting their purview by signing the LIP.
Page 3, item 3, it specifically addresses that. There's language that anything that they require is outside of the 6. So, I mean, I don't think they're gonna ask you to pay for it twice, I hope anyways, but one never knows.
Anybody else have questions? I have a couple of questions. So the last time, a couple of times ago, you were here when we were talking about water, the number was closer to $700,000. And that was like the water district's estimate. Is that $100,000 that's going to the water district project, or is that off the table?
I mean, this is the opportunity.
Okay. My next question is on the C, on page 3, number 5, C. It looks like it reads that it's only for sidewalks or speed humps. Would any safety items be included in that $600 if the DPW did something else was more appropriate?
So I think that'd be covered under D, other such improvements deemed appropriate by DPW director. I will say you will be hard fought to find something other than a sidewalk that reduces motor vehicle speeds down to 20 miles per hour consistently across the corridor of the speed bumps.
Okay. Mr. Otterjust, I will give you 3 minutes for public comment.
I kind of have a couple concerns with the new negotiations. We have a private street. We have 9 residents at the condominiums. We have number 4, number 29, number 32, and number 39. It's a private street. How can we say we're going to put a park in the neighborhood and say, it's a public park? Come join. So does this mean I can put a toll booth up at the end of my road and start charging $2 for every time somebody drives down this road? If we're just allowing this to go on and say, yep, we're going to give you a public park. You know what? I don't think anyone up there has considered anything about one of the other abutters. Yes, I'm losing my cool because this is ridiculous. We haven't discussed fencing. We haven't discussed arborvitaes. I'm not going to be sitting there and getting sued because some bozo decides he's going to leave his house and come over to slap my cow in the butt.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. And again, with the private road, how can we put a public park in down there?
My understanding is that the walking path would be on their property and it would be open to the public. They do address, this LIP does address landscaping elements on page 3, number 7.
So
Could you elaborate what they are, please?
absolutely. So one of the requirements, and I'm sorry that I missed this when I added in the different changes, provides they must provide a non-chain link privacy fence, so more of a decorative wood fence between their property and abutting properties, as well as a green landscape area between the fence and the abutting properties. So you will be looking at landscape, not a fence.
To be maintained for the period of how long?
Well, it's on their property, so they have to maintain it in perpetuity because it's on their property.
And this is going to be in writing.
This is
It is in writing.
Yes, it is in writing.
So let's get back to this public park.
I don't believe it's a public park.
Well,
He is talking about a walking path.
So this wording was in the agreement prior to me taking over negotiations that required a publicly accessible playground and a publicly accessible walking path. The only change I made was to add a signage informing the residents, because typically what happens in my professional experience is when you create these type of things and then 5 years later new residents come in and a person other than a resident starts walking on the walking path and suddenly everyone's like, hey, you don't live here, get off the path. So the sign, all I've required is that the sign says that it's publicly accessible. However, that language was in there previously from what this board reviewed.
So if it gives him the right to do all of this, then why can't I put a toll booth up and start charging $2 a car?
Because he owns a portion of the road as well.
That's right, but it's for private use. And if I'm not mistaken, the back part of that lot is still registered for Walsh Ave. It's not even on Perry Place.
We can certainly look into the legality of that for you.
But I'd like to look into the legality of a public park. You know what? He wants to do a private park that's accessible to the residents of those buildings only. I think that would be a lot better than saying to the town, hey, come on down to the private street. We paid for signs for the old chief of police to be put up. I paid for them out of my pocket. The no trespassing signs, no loitering signs, because that's what the chief of police asked me to do, and I did it.
So now we're saying, okay, now we're gonna turn the private street into a public street without any of the say-so of the residents?
This will not turn the two into a public street. Yes, Mr. Chambers.
May I, can I have?
Absolutely.
So this agreement has and always has stated that it does not infringe on anyone else's right as a property owner, just like Mr. Vinicasa has a right to use it. So any agreement we have, we cannot supersede. And through law, if you feel that there is an egregious action being taken by somebody else who owns property on there, you have the right to get that enforced. We're not looking to supersede anything. We're trying to make the community better. This is going to happen. Whether or not the park is there because of law remains to be seen, but it is part of our negotiation to improve the community. And it has been there. And when you get up there and actually say that we have done nothing, we have listened to everything everyone has said, and we are taking action within our purview. And you know you have to go to the ZBA when it gets there and have these conversations. So please do not come at the board and say that we're not listening. We are. We do care.
My apologies, Mr. Chambers.
Thank you.
As to the public park, and I don't want to continue it, Madam Chair, but nobody objected to this when it was suggested at the time. So
That only went in, I believe, like 3 meetings ago or 4 meetings ago. And if you look at the diagram that was passed out last Tuesday, there is no area of a public park on that diagram.
we're not creating public park, we're allowing public access. And we have had multiple meetings outside of this process with members of the public who have asked for walking trails. They've asked for more and varied recreation. Now, whether anybody goes from the town, nobody can say. But it makes sense from the planning documents that we have in place to create and allow residents of the town, including yourself, to go on this gentleman's property and use a walking trail, which many people would like to see in that area. There's not a lot in that area where you can go outside. You know, we have the walking trail up on Pappas. We certainly have the Gilbert Stockwell property, but I'm not quite convinced that many people use it because you can't find it. There's no space, but there's very few places in town for people to be able to walk in a natural setting that this affords. So we're not creating a public park. We're allowing, if it's allowed by law, for public access. It's on his property. We've asked him to allow the residents, for all these planning meetings that we've had as a community, people have identified that as one of the things that they would like to do. So it's may never be used. How do we know? But it's a good thing for the residents to be able to go on that property and be able to walk in the woods, if that's something they want to do, in my opinion. But I understand your point as well, Dan. I do.
Anybody else in the neighborhood?
I'm sorry, nobody else signed up for public comments, and I can allow you to have one more if you'd like.
I'm sorry?
I can allow you to have one more comment if you'd like, but nobody else signed up for comments.
I guess that's about it. I guess, I don't know why. This, parking? Are they gonna park on the streets for the park and the walking trails? Or is he gonna provide the parking?
I'm sorry, sir. You need to sign up for public comments if you'd like to make a comment.
Do you mind if I ask the question, Madam Chair?
Certainly.
So, Mr. Vaticasi, you heard the comments. Can
There is visitor parking, there is.
Thank you.
So the board has reviewed this, we've asked questions. Are we prepared to take a vote on this today? Are there any additional questions?
I mean, unless, you have something else you'd like to add.
I guess my only, the only other thing is, obviously, I think we ran all the revisions and everything through town council and everybody.
Oh, and that's the
Run that.
comment I wanted to make.
Yep.
This
Yeah,
is
one more
subject to
time
legal
before we do it.
review.
Right. So.
Oh, it hasn't been scrubbed by legal yet, but.
So what was discussed was that before we engage legal, we wanted to vote by the board that this is the document we wanted to move forward with. Based on that and based to allow the developer to move forward or not knowing whether he's doing a friendly, quote unquote, friendly 40B or an unfriendly 40B, I'm prepared to move the LIP agreement between the town and the developer at 16 Perry LLC, pending approval by review and approval by town council.
We'll second for discussion. Madam Chair, I just wanted to point out, I know we have residents here and you've ruled on the public comment item. You can certainly still communicate with the board, contact the office with any concerns you have. And I do just have one question for you to the town manager. Will this draft be on the website for residents of the neighborhood to review and potentially if they have any questions or comments? I mean, not that we can necessarily resolve those, but at least giving them, seeing what's on paper and giving them an opportunity to share any final concerns they might have.
Certainly, I see this as a public document anyway. So I'm only concerned about some of the language changes that have been made that have not been blessed by town council. So if they think that the language is hard and fast, there may be some changes to it.
Absolutely. So I would just suggest we put some sort of disclaimer that this is not the final document. It's been voted by the board to go to town council for obviously legal form and any minor revisions that might need to take place. So that was really the only reason I seconded it for discussion, just to do that.
Okay, so
At that point too, so after town council reviews, will we post this online for them again to review the edits?
I'm sorry?
Should town council have edits or something that needs to get changed, would that change get posted back for everyone to review as well?
I think its final version should be put on the website once it's been fully executed. Sure, they'll be able to see those changes.
And I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any substantial changes to this, it does have to come back to the
Have to
board.
come back to the board.
Or another vote. If it's simply wording changes, but the intent, nothing in your intent-wise changes, then it's considered final for the signatures by the chair.
okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Chair is a yes. Thank you. All right. So we're going back to 5D, the annual vote to reaffirm the code of conduct. Does anybody have any questions?
Madam Chair, I voted in favor of this, so I've asked my fellow board members not to reaffirm this. I know the intent behind it. The selectman who put it in place, and he certainly did not follow the letter or the spirit. So I've always kind of held it against the policy, but it's up to the board what they want to do.
Does anybody else have any comments?
I would just, if I'm allowed, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
I would just say that, in reading it, I was wondering why we had it and if it was truly necessary to have it. It seems like a normal operating procedure for any board or commission. It's certainly how we, operate on the planning board and didn't have to sign a policy committing ourselves to it. So unless there is a legal reason why or some extraordinary situation that I'm not aware of, I think I would agree with Mr. Carpenter.
I don't have that history behind it. Would you know, Mr. Kaznovich?
I don't, I would have to research that. I believe this was, if I'm not mistaken, a goal of the board some time ago that formulated this policy. But I'd have to research that and get the history on that.
Well, up until it was adopted, we didn't have one, so I think that's a fairly good one. And every other board in town doesn't have one, so I don't see why we wouldn't.
Make a motion not to adopt the policy.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair is yes. Okay. We do need to have a discussion and a potential vote on summer meeting schedule. Historically, the board only meets once in July and once in August, with the thought that if we needed an emergency meeting, that we could be available. Does anybody have any questions, or does anybody have any calendar dates that would not work? I was looking, I think, at July 10th and August 14th. Would those work? Would those not work?
Well, we're pretty flexible. I think there's there's been a practice of going to a summer schedule over the last few years that requires one meeting in July, one meeting in August, with the understanding that if something came up, then we would schedule a meeting on that regularly scheduled Monday. I was just thinking, the further we move away from the 4th, that seems to be a popular time. I was thinking the 17th and or the 14th or the 28th. So July 17th, with the consideration of either August 14th or 28th.
I don't want to do the 28th because that's just before Labor Day.
Okay.
I will
Okay.
not be available from August 12th to the 24th, or July, sorry. July 12th to the 24th.
I'm also not available from July 12th to the 27th.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you can't have a meeting.
Absolutely.
These are the kind of conflicts we run into with this summertime vacations and things of that nature, so.
Would July 10th work for you, Madam Chair?
July 10th would work for me and August 14th would work. Would that work?
August 14th, I am away on vacation, but provided we are still doing remote access, I'm fine to call in for that meeting.
I'll make a motion, we set a summer schedule for one meeting in July and August, on July 10th and August 14th.
Is there-
No additional music needed?
Well, the chair can always call it.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair is a yes. Does that work? Okay. And now we are moving on to town manager items.
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Sarah, do we have anything for the chiefs or anybody else here?
I don't think so.
So I did put 2 items on here. Now that we have a full board, I wanted to identify some goals after consulting with the Board of Selectmen. In the past, the Board of Selectmen have set goals. I don't believe that the last 2 years they have set goals. I don't know if that's a desire of the board to set goals, and then I would structure my goals to meet the priority of the Board of Selectmen. I just wanted to get it on the radar screen so we could start thinking about goals for the upcoming year. I'm not looking to get specific tonight, but I just wanted to have a general discussion as to whether or not there's a desire of the board to set their own goals, and at that point, I would, my framework would probably center around the board's goals as well.
So I did look into this a little bit. The last time the board set goals was in 2018. They seem to be like worthwhile goals. I think the biggest one in 2018 was a review of the board policies. But they also included live streaming the meeting, which we have happening now, and reviewing the entertainment license. And I know there's been some discussion about looking at the ease of use of the town's website. That would be I think a good goal. But I am happy to hear any other suggestions.
Is this something we get our working group together for and come back with, or is this something we all email separately, potential, and work out? Because it is the board's goals, not individual, so.
Right.
I don't know if, we can't all meet, right? So we have to do subgroups. Can we do 2 subgroups, or how does that work?
Well, we could all meet and just
We
work
vote
on
on
the
it.
goals.
Yeah.
We could do that if that's what the board wanted to do. I think it makes sense. None of us were on the board, including myself, when these policies were put in place. You know, The other big thing when we talk about website is accessibility of documentation, making it easier for the residents and businesses to submit paperwork, not necessarily physically having to walk up to a window to do that. Also our communication strategy, I would like to see us in the website as part of that, how we communicate what's going on, because I truly believe that some of the problems we're having is we're not casting a wide enough net. And we need to start looking at how we can communicate with people. Since COVID, you can't find a copy of the Auburn account. You can't find a copy of the Flagtown Flyer in any of the businesses. Whereas prior to COVID, that was present. So that's a great way for not only those organizations to get their information out, but it also gives the residents a chance to pick it up when they're at their favorite coffee shop or at the post office to see what's been going on in town or what might be coming up. So, that's one idea that I would support, trying to see what we can do on that.
So can I just seek clarification? Are we shooting out goals tonight, or are we gonna meet in a separate meeting and discuss the goals and then present them?
I think if you want, you can send, would they go to me or to you?
Yeah, I mean, you could filter them through the chair, and then the chair and I can have a conversation relative to the needs and desires of the board.
And then we could set goals at another meeting.
If it helps them now, you can share.
We'll be here all night.
Well, it's only for a year. It has to be accomplished within a year.
I'm optimistic.
All right, we are back to you with town manager goals.
So I think they're related to one another, so certainly I wasn't prepared. I mean, I have some things in mind, but without knowing what the board would like, I'm gonna reserve that until I get some feedback from the board.
Great.
The Auburn Housing Authority vacancy. So I did include in your packet a letter I received from the chair. It is my understanding that serves as a notification that starts a process to fill that vacancy under Chapter 41, Section 11. It was also my understanding that the board had a meeting, the Housing Authority had a meeting last week in which they voted to appoint or recommend Wayne Page for that vacancy. I reached out to the director late last week on Friday to have a conversation relative to their process that made that recommendation. I got a call back this morning, not from the director, but from Betty. And it was conveyed to me that there was no advertisement of any sort to see if there was any interest in anyone interested in filling that vacancy. Under Chapter 41, the notice has been served. We do have to notify the Housing Authority of the joint vote that would be required in order to fill that vacancy. And I think we have to notify them. There's a time period of at least a week's advance notice that vote is going to take place.
Madam Chair, if I may?
Absolutely.
So I did watch that meeting, and I was very disappointed with the process that they went through. So within 1 week's time, they went from receiving the resignation of the member to scheduling a vote to fill the vacancy. They initially advertised it on their agenda that they were going to be filling the position, and then immediately reorganizing and most likely assigning the person to the board in violation of Mass General Law. Fortunately, somebody talked to them and made them realize that's not appropriate. Even still, they, as the town manager said, they did not advertise the position. One of their members asked the executive director and the chair if they had advertised. They did not. If anyone had submitted a letter of inquiry requesting, they said no. And not even Mr. Page asked to be reappointed. They just decided that they knew he would want the position, so they took that vote. One of their members raised MGL process and said that this is not supposed to be a vote tonight. It's supposed to be a joint vote that takes place between the select board and their board at a scheduled meeting following an advertisement. And they said, well, we're just going to recommend Mr. Page anyways. And they voted 3-1 to do that. So what I would like to ask, since they did not advertise, I would like to ask town administration that you advertise for this position on the website and put it out on Facebook and other social media accounts and any other avenue you have when you normally advertise for these types of vacancies, so that we can get candidates. And then we can follow our board policy, which is to interview those candidates, as this board has done previously with vacancies on the library board of trustees. We provide their members, as well as our members, the opportunities for questions and answers with those candidates, and then we schedule a vote. I'm not prepared to recommend, nothing against Mr. Page. I'm not prepared to recommend anybody tonight until we go through that process, because that's the proper process that I think we need to follow.
Chair, if I may, this is not the first time we've had this issue with this particular board. Ms. Brennan is well aware, because the prior manager went over this process with her. And the current chair was vice chair of the board. We can't live in a closed society where we all decide who we like to sit on particular boards. That isn't how democracies work. That isn't how they're supposed to work. And it annoys me that a publicly elected body chose not only not to advertise the position, they've also taken the unusual step of not broadcasting their meetings, so that the public, of which they answer to, at least 4 out of the 5 members answer to a public election, don't feel that their members who live in their community should be able to watch the proceedings on TV. So, we do need to have a conversation with any board that wants a vacancy filled. And I just don't trust the process from this organization. And in the past, I know the past practice was the Housing Authority oversaw this, but I just don't have confidence that they're doing the right thing. So it's more appropriate that the town manager and the Board of Selectmen oversee the advertising process for any vacancy that comes to us, so that we can at least be assured that our policy is being followed. And, it's very disappointing when public bodies take such anti-democratic votes. It shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't be happening in our town.
Would you need a motion to take this forward?
No, I think that's a policy of the board that's already in existence, so we will follow that policy. We'll advertise for the vacant position and bring those interested individuals before the board for an interview with the joint, at that joint meeting.
Great.
Can I just ask, do we have a timeline when we're thinking that we'll be able to do that?
I guess it will all depend on the level of interest that is going to be responded to. I would probably, if we get it out there tomorrow, maybe we can focus on the initially the July 10th meeting, and we can always hold it at the August meeting if we have to. Madam Chair, the Finance Committee vacancies, just once again, we have advertised for that. We currently do not have any applications or anyone that is interested. We will continue to advertise. We're going into a period where the Finance Committee, typically things slow down over the summer. But hopefully we can get a candidate or two that we can bring to you. But I just want to let you know, we currently do have one vacancy as a result of Ann being elected, and Diane's vacancy, her last day is June 30th. So that deadline is fast approaching. So hope to have something to bring before you, maybe at the July meeting.
Madam Chair, if I can just ask a question, are those precinct-specific seats or are they at large?
So there are specific seats. I would have to visit that because there could be a redundancy in precincts on a few individuals. I think one's at large and one is, there is a precinct. I don't recall which one, but.
I'm just thinking if the board is gonna do our due diligence and try to get you some candidates, we wanna make sure we know where we're recruiting from.
And I know past practice has been, if a member is sitting who is at large and qualifies for a precinct seat, they have been slid into that precinct seat so that it's easier to get somebody on the board.
We'll let you know which seats those are, which representation. And item G, the reopening of the senior center. I just want to let you know that the senior center reopened on June 1st. And certainly I wanted to put this on there to thank a number of individuals who were very involved in the rehab of the facility, as well as reassigning activities at a different location. So I'd like to publicly thank James Beauregard, who, without him, he did a fantastic job in providing labor in his skill set that saved the town a lot of money. He's a master carpenter. Pat Beauregard, from the insurance aspect of things, she coordinated, and it was massive. The total cost to date is about $165,000. So there was a lot of administrative paperwork relative to the claim. Thanks to Jean Boulay, the director, Kristen Pappas, Usha Verma, several DPW workers who worked overtime in making that facility open on time. And certainly a non-employee Reverend Knight. He went to bat for us. He opened up his facility, and we were there for 3 months, and things ran pretty smoothly. So big thank you to Reverend Knight. But the facility is now open. It's beautiful. If you get an opportunity to stop by, I'm sure it'll be much appreciated. But it's great to have the facility back open. The seniors are very appreciative of the work that was done up there. Thank you.
Great. We have no table items. We have a member item, and there's an email in your packet. Dan, did you want to discuss?
If anybody has any questions, the superintendent outlines it better than I could, so I'm certainly not going to reword it, but it's something that looks like both bodies can support. And I know the original goal was to get a student representative, but this is giving an opportunity for multiple students, and I think that's a great advantage. And it looks like Mr. Kennard is willing to take that extra effort to do those things. So we're very appreciative of that. The school committee, the school department, obviously town administration has been very helpful in this as well. Both past and present managers have been supportive of it. So I would just be looking for a vote of the board to support this outline and send a note to the school department and school committee, and we'll follow from there.
Does anybody have any questions? So we would be looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve this and send it to the school committee, school department.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair is a yes. We've gotten through everything, so we just need a motion to.
Can I ask?
Yeah, absolutely.
One more thing, because I know we had a good discussion on this, and Selectmen Ren put a lot of effort in negotiating. I know the town manager, both town managers have done that, and Mr. Crane, after shortly being elected, took on the responsibility, so I just wanted to say thank you to both of them and to town administration for the hard work, and it certainly shows in the final product, so very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I will make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.